You know what I also love about Skyfall is the fact that they shook Bond to his core. For the first time, you can actually see Bond didn't have it. When M was telling him to go back to training, and the guy said, how many did he hit today? Didn't hit anything, Mom. He totally missed the targets.
Missed everything.
It was like he was basically shaking.
He was shaking.
But not stirred.
Not stirred.
Can I do something for you, Mr. Bond?
Just a drink. A martini, shaken, not stirred.
Vodka martini. Shaken, not stirred.
Can I tell you what's messed up about James Bond? Shaken, not stirred will get you cold water with a dash of gin and dry vermouth. The reason you stir it with a special spoon is so not to chip the ice. James is ordering a weak martini and being snooty about it.
Vodka martini, shaken, not stirred.
Don't look like I give a damn.
But some people without brains do an awful lot of talking, don't they?
Oh, you should put that speech on tape.
He pulls a knife, you pull a gun. He sends one of yours to the hospital, you send one of his to the morgue. That's the Chicago way.
Hello, Chicago, hello.
Hello.
Hello. Got a drink to that.
Welcome to Alternate Reality.
Everyone loved that show. What are you talking about?
That was a fine series.
No, it was not.
Hey, I got a great idea. People will tune in to watch Jamie Farr every week. No, they won't. No, they won't. Well, we got Harry Morgan, too. Harry Morgan's a fine actor.
No, he was showing
Nobody's going to tune in to watch him.
Every once in a while.
We're going to watch
the war's over. Get a job.
Yeah, the war's over with.
Get a job. Are you still wearing those damn dresses you wore over there?
If you followed the books, the Hooker books, the second book was Hawkeye's life when he wasn't in the military. He was back home in Maine.
Well, they weren't going to get Alan Alda back.
No,
he wanted to get as far away from Hawkeye as he could by the end of that series.
Could have found Trapper John.
But you know who is back? We are at the Alternate Reality. Hey, folks, welcome to the Alternate Reality. We are back, and we are ready to go. Oh, this is reality. Alternate reality. And we're located at the intersection of 111th and
Where's
Kedzie.
my martini, damn it?
Beautiful downtown Mount Greenwood.
Chicken.
Alternate reality, which is the one place you can go to in the city of Chicago. It is the one place in the world, the one brick and mortar store you can go to, where you will get 15% off all your new comics every day for everyone. This, of course, is the store's podcast, The Alternate Reality. And today, at Bo's request,
and Rodney's,
at Bo's request, this is an all James Bond episode of The Alternate Reality. I have no problem with doing an all James Bond episode of The Alternate Reality. Lord knows it fits right in with exactly what the point behind this podcast is supposed to do. At some point, we will do Star Wars episodes. At some point, we'll do Star Trek episodes.
Lost in Space.
We're even going to do Batman 66 episodes, which you're not going to be invited into because you're a pain in the ass.
I can actually sit for that one.
Well, you'll have to clear up your schedule on a Thursday because I think good old JR and I are going to do it. So you're going to have to clear off a Thursday.
Okay.
Thursday night.
But anyway, there's nothing wrong with doing an all James Bond episode.
James Bond.
I just don't know what the point is right now behind you wanting to do it.
This gentleman sitting next to me.
By the way, let me introduce the two of you. Joining me today, as always, are the dynamic duo themselves of the one and only Mr. Rod Flash.
Dun, 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 dun. Hello.
Yeah, that's Rod Flash. And the man who thinks he's James Bond.
Double O.
Double O Bo.
Double O Bo.
Double O Bo.
Bocepheus to kill.
Yeah.
Oh.
No, that's only your armpits.
Guess what? Oh, yeah.
And I'm sitting far enough away from where I can't smell it. You, I feel sorry for, Rod.
Meat. License to kill meat and roast and make foods.
They're joining me today in this all James Bond episode. Bo, this is your baby. Take it. I don't know why you want to do a James Bond episode. I mean, if this was an anniversary or something, or if they just announced the casting, okay, I could see it, but they haven't.
Well, this is a pretty big week in Bond news.
Okay.
Danny Boyle was supposed to be directing Bond 25.
Okay. Danny
Boyle is now no longer directing Bond 25 because of a fallout between the studio. Daniel Craig, who issued a joint statement saying Mr. Boyle will not be working on Bond 25 due to
creative differences.
Now, when they said creative differences, no one knew exactly what that meant. Then about a day or so after, they said, well, the creative differences were, he wanted to hire as the villain a Polish actor that had only done like one film up to this point, and the Broccolis and Daniel Craig weren't too happy about that. Barbara Broccoli, daughter of Cubby Broccoli, was also not happy that Boyle was coming in with his own screenwriter, using his own people. That's not really how the Bond films work. It is literally a family business. Mm-hmm. It's Broccoli, it's Wilson, it's Daniel Craig because he's involved with James Bond right now.
For this one last movie.
Because this is his last movie. Purvis and Wade, Neil Wade and Purvis, they'd already come up with a script, but Boyle basically came in and said, the script you actually paid for? I don't want it. And he threw it away. Now, the only reason that Boyle was doing the film in the first place is because when they did the Olympics, that little opening thing where James Bond parachutes in and talks to the Queen. Danny Boyle directed that. Okay. And so he and Craig got on quite well, and everything was fine. And then as they kept working, and they're going, this isn't working at all.
What was Boyle's problem?
He wanted to do things his own way. He wanted to hire an obscure actor as a villain, and he went, no, we don't really do obscure actors as villains.
Well, no, the actors that they've picked in the past play villains. During the Daniel Craig run,
people knew who Mads Mikkelsen was. They knew who
really?
Yeah. They didn't know who Mr. White was.
They know who he is now, especially
but back then he was someone people would sit and went, oh, I'm comfortable with this guy. Now, for the second film, Quantum had his own issues to deal with the writer's strike. And then when you got past that point, you had
Javier Bardem
in Skyfall, and then you had Christoph
one of the
Waltz.
top 5 best of all
in the
time.
last films. And so it's like we like to hire known actors or people who are around. We don't know who this guy is. Well, he did a film that showed up at festivals. So what makes him qualified to be the big deal villain? Because this is Daniel Craig's last film. We kind of have to make this a big deal. He can't be a big deal acting against some guy that people are going, who the hell's that?
They might have done a better job.
Yeah, you know
he
what?
He might have done a great job.
I disagree with that because if you put a known actor in there, Bond seemed a little bit too Hollywoodish. You're getting some guy there trying to act like a villain as opposed to an unknown person.
You mean like Christopher Walken?
Yeah, you mean like Christopher Walken? Who was one of the worst Bond villains of all time?
Not pick on, he couldn't help it.
Yes, he could. He could have said no.
No, it wasn't the script. Do not pick on Christopher Walken.
Christopher Walken said yes for a check.
We were talking about the concept of the check. Yeah, it was a check thing. Same thing with Grace Jones. It was a check. The Beauty Kill is one of the worst Bond films ever made.
But it does hold the record of having the first Bond song to go number one.
One of the best Bond singles and one of the most successful ever.
Duran, boys and girls.
As a film, that film was painful to sit through.
Yes, it was.
It's not all of it. I watched a big chunk of it about a year ago, and yeah, it was still pretty.
Your mind sort of turns off about 2 minutes into it.
Oh,
and it's Moore's last film, and Moore at this point is too old to be playing James.
Tanya Hunter's in it, or
Roberts.
The Charlie's Angels.
Yeah, Sheena.
Yeah, Sheena.
Tanya Roberts. Yes. Well, everyone knew who Tanya was. So right now, Bond 25 has no director, and they released a short list yesterday. It was kind of weird. Edgar Wright's on that list. Baby Driver. That's not the guy you would expect to do a Bond film. It doesn't really work because he likes to work on his own. David Mackenzie, who did The Hell or High Water, who was one of the short list before Danny Boyle came in. A guy named John Mark Belly, who's done an independent film which went over quite well. And a guy named Jan Demange, who's doing a film that I'm actually looking forward to, White Boy Rick.
Yes, I did.
That film looks amazing.
Yes, I did see that.
I saw that trailer and I go, this is quite interesting. And so he's on the short list. MGM has not announced a delay in production, so they must have someone relatively close. I'm assuming it's Demange or David Mackenzie. Or it could be Sam Mendes, because Mendes is still listed as a producer, and Mendes was the guy who came in when Daniel Craig was made as James Bond, and so let him finish up the run. And end that. And once you get to that point, then you figure out who the new directors are. Idris Elba's James Bond story came back up out of the grave.
But at this point in our recording it's dead. It's been dead for at least a week or so.
The Elba thing's not dead because Elba's on the internet trolling people about it every single day.
He's been for the past.
He's having nothing but fun with this thing because he said 2 years ago, "I'm too old. Thank you for asking me. I consider it a great honor, but I'm too old to play James Bond." And I told you he could play the villain.
Yeah, he can play the villain, sure.
Daniel Craig and Idris Elba facing off against each other.
Well, it doesn't matter how old you are to play the villain.
Yeah.
But for Bond, yeah.
Yeah, you can play the villain.
I think James Bond, it's the Broccoli family.
Yeah.
And people are going to get upset by this, but I don't think they're ever going to pick a black actor to play James Bond. As talented as Idris Elba is, and as great as he would be in a role like that in his prime, I don't think that they're ever going to pick a black actor to play James Bond.
Or a female.
I just don't think the Broccoli family are going to do it. I think what you wound up with Daniel Craig, that's about as far as pushing the envelope as you're ever going to get with that character. And I wouldn't be at all surprised if the next time around they went back to the Roger Moore, Pierce Brosnan mold of handsome super spy.
Well, one of the things we were having a discussion, you know, I believe the next Bond is going to be? It's going to be Henry Cavill. Because Henry Cavill was too young and on the short list before Craig got the job. Henry Cavill's not young anymore.
Yeah, but he's kind of too buffed.
It doesn't matter.
I think the biggest problem you have with Henry Cavill is he brings the Superman baggage with him.
That's the other thing. Now, let's go through the history of James Bond. James Bond, as we know, was created by Ian Fleming. James Bond became a big deal to people because JFK was a huge fan of the books. And he pimped the books. Most presidents tend to read when they're hanging around and do stuff, and so he pimped it. And the films came out and they made money. Now, since those books have came out, and by the way, when the Fleming books that turned into Bond films, they never used the actual stories, they just used the names.
They use the titles. I remember when Moonraker came out.
That was it was an Ian Fleming short story.
But Moonraker, the novel, has absolutely nothing to do with space.
No.
Because I think
but Moon is in the title, so we'll do a space one.
In fact, I think Moonraker, the story, I think that story takes place in Florida. I've read the Ian Fleming Bond books, and they're really not that good. They're interesting in their own way, but they're really not that good. Now, since Fleming stopped...
They were groundbreaking, I think.
For the time.
For the time, and also, they were the first novels to do the super spy thing with the license to kill, with this guy is working for the government, not our government, the British government, but still, he's working for the government and he's out there killing people, but under the auspices of the British government.
Our Majesty's Secret Service.
Our Majesty's Secret Service. Yeah. And nobody had ever done that before. Not that you didn't have characters out there who didn't kill people. But to rip open the veil of what is really, quote unquote, going on behind the scenes with our governments, which series actually wasn't. It was about as much BS as anything that Philip Marlowe ever did.
And the biggest cliche there was that Ian Fleming actually worked for the people where this agency came from.
Not just prestige, but you'd read it and go, oh, well, this guy worked there, so he must know what he's talking about.
He worked for the OSS.
Yeah, he must know what he's talking about.
He knows what he's talking about.
So therefore, this must be real.
Yeah, it's got to be real. It's got to be because he's a former spy. Yeah. He's writing about a spy who kills people. This must be what's really going on.
Yeah, you want to read about real spies? Read what's his face? That wrote Smiley's People.
Yeah, read John Le Carre.
Yeah, that's real spies.
Yeah, that's real spy stuff.
Yeah, the grinding monotony of it all.
I tried to read a couple of John Carre earlier, and God, these books are dry as hell.
But what the Broccoli's wound
up... they're good, but they were dry as hell.
But what the Broccoli's wound up doing when they got a hold of the rights to the character was they turned him into a super spy.
Super spy.
Yeah, super spy.
Gadgets, coat, suave, tuxedo,
get the girls,
villains, get the girls, big explosions, hot chicks. Yeah, he's James Bond. He's licensed to kill. QM, you get to meet all these people. It's like, oh, this is kind of different. This is kind of unusual. And the other point was the fact that these films came out on a schedule. At the end of every Bond film, James Bond will return in, and they already told you what it was,
right?
Because these films came out on a schedule. Mm-hmm. And most people, like at our age, we didn't go to the theaters to see these things. ABC ran those things.
Yes,
for they would
ABC Sunday night.
Once ABC got a hold of those things, they ran them into the ground.
They ran them a lot.
Yeah,
they were must watch.
It would be Bond week. You would basically run like 7 days worth of Bond films. On Sunday. Now going back to the books, John Gardner took over the reins of the books long after Ian Fleming was good. The Gardner ones are actually quite good. Raymond Benson, a local writer. He was a Bond fan who did encyclopedias and stuff. His books were quite well. The last one was Jeffrey Deaver, who did The Bone Collector, the film that was the Angelina Jolie, Denzel Washington film. Okay, he only got one book out of that, and it didn't really sell. Gardner wrote like about 20 books. Gardner wrote more Bond stories than Ian Fleming did. Raymond Benson did about 12, and Raymond Benson still lives in Chicago. And, if you want to talk about James Bond, you go to Raymond Benson. He knows what's going on. He knows everything. He knows every little bit and piece of information that James Bond has ever come up with. It's what he does.
Well, as I remember it going back, and we've both been around long enough to actually live through this stuff and remember hearing about it. When they were getting up to near the end of the Bond books, the big problem the Broccoli's had was, we're running out of books.
Yeah.
We want to keep making movies. Yeah. Therefore, we need more books.
Yeah.
And Ian Fleming's dead.
Right.
So he ain't writing any more books.
And so they hired John Gardner to start it up. And John Gardner was a prestige writer. He was a guy who wasn't writing any spy stuff at all. He was a big deal, mainstream, highfalutin writer. And he said, I can do these. And you pick up the first Gardner Bond and go, damn. These are actually better than the Ian Fleming books.
But the main reason the Broccoli's did that was because they were running out of material to make Bond movies.
You'd run out of story. You'd run out of titles.
So Gardner comes along, starts writing books. Now we got more movies we can make.
And yet, they've never used a single one of Gardner's titles as a film.
But they can.
But they could. If they could. And people would go, well, why don't you adapt some of their books? They got one book called Broken Claws. The villain's an American Indian. And I'm like, it's a great book. But I'm like, well, why did they make that? And the one book was called Icebreaker. All these books are really good. None of them have ever been adapted, ever. But they own the names to all this stuff. And you got the Dynamite comic license where, they can't run out of stuff to do.
They do a short little 4 or 5 issue miniseries.
They do miniseries, they do ongoing,
and then
miniseries,
put it in trade, and it's
hell, you got a Moneypenny hardcover that came out about a month or so ago. It's like, it's Moneypenny. Wow, Moneypenny. Moneypenny's kind of cool.
Well, they're doing one-shots. Thick one-shots.
Thick one-shots.
On different characters in the Bond universe.
Yeah, Felix
Moneypenny was one of them. I think they had one on either M or Q that's...
and Felix Leiter had a couple limited series.
Felix Leiter had
the guy who did the first Bond stuff for Dynamite was Warren Ellis. And the Bond people, the Broccoli family approached him and said, we think you can do this because we like what you do in comics. Yeah. So it's like, no. The first actor to play James Bond... Who was it?
Oh, I know where you're going with this.
No, who was it?
It was TV thing.
Yeah.
I know who it is. I don't know who it is.
Barry Nelson.
Barry Nelson. That's right, Barry Nelson. No, that's like the worst trivia question in the world for Bond because it's been used so many times. Everybody knows it. It was Barry Nelson. It was a TV thing. It lasted like
Casino
it was an hour long. Yeah,
it was an adaptation of Casino Royale.
Yeah.
Which was adapted again in a really, really crappy film starring David Niven as an old Ash James.
Well, that was, but that was
that was separate from the
3 movies. Yeah. That was like 3 movies into the franchise, and it was separate because there's a rights problem.
There was a rights issue, and it had nothing to do with the rest of them. And it was David Niven and his son spy called Jimmy Bond.
Well, you've got Peter Sellers in that too.
Yeah,
you have 3 Bonds in that, don't you?
You got Niven as an old Bond. You got you got a middle, and you got a kid Bond.
Yeah, you got a kid Bond, and
Peter Sellers.
Peter Sellers. God.
You said that. You already said that.
I know. I vapor locked. Peter Sellers also played James Bond in it. It was a title that within the confines of that movie, they moved literally from actor to actor to actor within the movie.
Yeah.
Just like they do broadly, in which they hadn't done at that point because it was only... I think that came out before Secret Service. So it was just Sean Connery.
Yeah.
They hadn't gotten into changing it over yet.
No, they hadn't flipped over at all.
But in Casino Royale, within the confines of that movie, the title shifts from actor to actor.
Yeah, I think I watched Casino Royale on ABC's afternoon movie coming home from school once. When I, even as a kid, I went, this really sucks.
I watched it about 8 months ago on Netflix or something because I'd never seen it before.
Oh.
And I wanted to watch it because I'd never seen it. Yeah, I'd read all about it.
Yeah.
And I was amazed by how bad it was.
It's horrible.
Well, I also knew it was bad because I'd read about it.
Yeah, I didn't even know it was bad. I just watched it because I came home from school and went, and I'm sitting there as a kid and I'm going, this really sucks. Now, of course, since that point, since Barry Nelson was the first guy to do it, Sean Connery, we mentioned David Niven, George Lazenby, who only did 1 film.
He one of the best.
Well, one of the best Bond films ever.
Best and one of the most important as far as continuity goes. Yeah. That is the one that introduces Blofeld.
Yes.
Yeah. That is the one where he gets married.
And that's the one where at the end of the film
he becomes a widower.
Yeah, he's a widower at the end of the film.
And all of that happens in that one movie.
Yeah. Movie freaked me out watching that Sunday. Did his wife just get killed?
Yep. Diana Rigg.
And you know what? And you know what? One of the great tragedies of that film is that should have been Sean Connery.
Yeah.
You watch that film and you can see Sean Connery doing that whole movie, and he's nowhere to be found in it.
He was probably drunk.
No.
He's Connery.
No, Connery. There was a dispute with the contract. He wanted to get out of the contract
because the Broccolis were notoriously cheap. And he wanted out, and I guess he wanted to...
He was getting typecast.
And he was getting typecast. He couldn't do anything else.
Yeah.
Because he's like, I can do things other than this. I can play dramatic stuff. Before you saw me, I was doing dramatic stuff.
Yeah.
And, of course, Roger Moore, who was, to me, the lesser James Bond of all.
Yeah,
some of Moore's films are fine. For Your Eyes Only, it's a quite good film.
Yes,
Octopussy's good.
Octopussy's quite good. With even Live and Let Die in its own little ways is okay. Well, Jane Seymour in that, but
well, Live and Let Die is
watching that Sunday. Stuff they weren't supposed. Stuff they weren't supposed to put on TV.
I saw that movie in the Beverly Theater. I saw
Live and Let Die is unique in that it's Moore's first.
Yeah.
So you can cut him a lot of slack in that because he's finding his way.
He's trying to figure out where he is there.
Yeah, he's trying to figure out who and what he is. And the movie itself, the way it's plotted and the way it's structured, is not bad.
No,
it's not a bad film.
It's James Bond in Harlem, and you're going, okay, well, he's in Harlem. This is a little unusual.
Well, yeah, it is, but
it works.
Yeah,
it works.
Well, here's the thing: for a character who, in every single movie, correct me if I'm wrong, he goes to 3 different locales. Harlem is just as viable a locale as any place else.
Yeah.
It may not be Rio, it may not be Paris, but it is a locale which everyone knows.
It's a British guy in a suit walking through Harlem with a tie and an ascot.
And that's what makes it unique.
And people are going, who's this cool-looking dude walking down the street? And Timothy Dalton, who's actually a quite good Bond, people didn't really know to take that because by the time you got to View to a Kill, people thought Bond was a joke.
Yeah.
The Living Daylights those films were pretty good. Pierce Brosnan, who was going to play Bond before Dalton, but Remington Steele came up.
Remington Steele said, basically told him,
you're under contract for this one season. And Brosnan was the suave Bond. He was cool. He fit the suit.
He was the Bond that's basically born to play Bond.
But if you look at the Fleming books, the guy who's supposed to play James Bond is not Pierce Brosnan. He's not supposed to be that cool looking. He's not supposed to be cool at all. He's supposed to look like Daniel Craig and Sean Connery. That's what he's supposed to look like.
I've heard this before. I never thought Sean Connery was all that ugly looking to begin with.
Well,
he might not have been suave.
No, he wasn't suave.
But I never thought of him as, everybody talking about Daniel Craig as not being the pretty Bond, quote unquote, but Sean Connery, he was a pretty Bond.
Well, when you look at Sean Connery, the first time you see Sean Connery in that white tuxedo, sitting there with a cigarette hanging out of his mouth, Sean Connery was not pretty.
That wasn't pretty. That's magnetism. No. That's charisma. That scene right there. Yeah. That's what it is. You look at him and go, "Oh damn, I got something I can watch now."
Right.
Oh yeah, that was
Bond is not supposed to be suave. Bond is supposed to be rough around the edges. He's supposed to.
Daniel Craig.
He's supposed to, if you're talking about Ian Fleming, he's supposed to look like the singer Hoagie Carmichael, who was quite unattractive.
Oh, yes.
But that was who he was supposed to look like.
Yeah, well, the problem with that is nobody's going to go see a movie with someone who looks like that. The Broccolis were smart enough to figure that much out.
Right, it's like, we're going to get these younger, suaver, cooler-looking people. The form of the film has never changed, Over the top villain. Okay.
Before you go on, let's take a break. And when we come back, we'll talk about the formula.
Yes.
Okay? And we'll be right back after this. Folks, there really is no other store that has as many sales as Alternate Reality. Beyond our signature sale of 15% off all new comics, we also have specialized sales peppered throughout the week, month, and year. For example, did you know that every Thursday is Ladies' Day at the store? That's right, ladies. Stop by the store and you'll save 20% off all of your purchases all day long. Ladies from 8 to 80 get a 20% discount on everything all day, every Thursday, only at Alternate Reality. And we're back. Okay, before we took the break, you were talking about the formula for Bond films.
The formula for the Bond films is never changed. Over-the-top villain, impressive set design, a killer song, gadgets, which Daniel Craig realized and Sam Mendes realized right away. We don't need to do gadgets yet because we're trying to introduce this brand new Bond. We will introduce them gradually. And, of course, massive destruction at the end of the film. His last name was Adam. Would build these massively huge, impressive sets. And at the end of the movie, they all got blown up.
His last name is Adam.
Oh, you forgot something. You forgot the elaborate chase scene.
You're talking about Derek Mendes, aren't you?
No.
Back in the 60s and 70s.
No, it was...
Ken Adam?
Ken Adam was the guy who basically designed, he came up with the production design for all these films. And he would build these elaborate sets and stuff, and they'd all blow up.
Oh, well, I was talking Derek Mendes did a lot of the miniature work.
Yeah, he did all the miniature work.
Like, was it Spy Who Loved Me, the one with the submarines?
Yeah.
Yeah, he did a lot of the miniature work.
Yeah, a lot of the
and
other
stuff, too.
Yeah, but in that, it was a family business.
Of all the stuff that you mentioned, that formula, the song one, and you back me up on this, Rod, because you're the music guy, the song one is the one that is the biggest variable in the bunch, because while they might want to go for a killer song, they very rarely get a killer song. There's a handful of songs that people associate to Bond, but they've done like 26 movies. There haven't been 26 hits out of that series.
There is, if you go...
There may be 5 or 6.
Well, no, but if you go through Amazon at one point, there is a CD.
Yeah, there is.
Which has all of them. And Shirley Bassey did like about 3 of them. All of which were great. Her Moonraker's incredible. It's impressive as hell. Yeah, it's like, wow, you know. But yeah,
that's
like
Goldfinger you're singing.
Yeah, it's Goldfinger.
Well, she did. I'm telling you, she did that line.
She did that line. No. Moonraker. If you listen to the song, her voice goes up and down. It's like as the Moonraker goes, and you see she's they're going. Man, she had great range.
But a lot of those songs never made the top 20 or even the top 50. They never got into wide release. But some of them did.
The only ones that really...
View to a Kill we talked about.
Yeah, the only ones that made the big money were the ones by the Major League Pop Stars.
And, of course, Goldfinger.
Spy Who Loved Me. Spy Who Loved Me, For Your Eyes Only.
Yeah, For Your Eyes Only.
Live and Let Die.
Yeah. Skyfall. She won an Oscar for that one.
Skyfall.
They wind up actually hitting it about once every...
Sam Smith. Sam Smith was the last one. And that's so The Writings on the Wall sold quite well.
Once every 3 or 4 movies, they actually wind up getting a song that hits.
Yeah.
But I think they try for every movie.
They try because they try to find some big deal artist to do the song, and also it's a family business.
Part of the formula, also, which you didn't mention, is the openings.
Yeah,
the op art openings.
The op art openings,
which goes all the way back to Dr. No.
Yeah, he walks across, he turns, he shoots, and the blood comes down.
Yeah,
and then when you get the opening credits, you know he's floating around and stuff, and that's been used by multiple people since that point.
I forget the name of the guy who originally came up with that, but he's the guy that did all those credits for like the first 10, 15 movies. Then he died, but they kept doing those openings.
Well, the Bond,
because that's signature for that character.
Yeah, the Bond films of a family business. Michael Wilson, the guy who's co-producing with Barbara Broccoli. Michael Wilson started in films way back when Connery was doing Bond. He was like a 20-year-old kid. He's still there. People who work on the Bond films, once you're on there, you don't go anywhere. You stay. And you work there, and you keep working, and you keep working. The films have a regular schedule. This is when they come out. The last credit you see is James Bond will return. And he always returns.
It's the movie franchise that every movie franchise out there has always tried to emulate. And very few have succeeded at. And I think partly because what you were talking about with the Broccoli family, it's a family-owned business.
It's a family business.
And many of these other franchises are divided up among corporations that don't have that impetus to do that.
Where else can you think of a franchise that has had different actors play the lead character?
The same character.
It's the same guy, it's just different people playing it.
I think that Doctor Who would be the closest
but that's TV.
Yeah, right, that's TV.
That's TV. But the thing about movie franchises, the Bond franchise has made probably $5 billion.
Yeah, the thing about Doctor Who, though, is Doctor Who institutionalized the whole idea of changing actors with regenerations. With Bond, they just show up. Which is why a lot of fans, and at some point I think the Broccoli's are probably going to have to address this, but a lot of fans, have that fan theory where James Bond is a title that just gets passed from spy to spy to spy as the years go on.
There's actually not a guy named James Bond.
But there's not a guy. You get picked. This is the old Bond. Hi, you're retiring. Bye. You're the new Bond. Hi.
You know what? That's what I wanted to touch on.
You're 007, but when you leave, there's a new person who's named 007.
But his name is always James Bond.
He's always James Bond.
That's why I love watching Casino Royale, the Daniel Craig version. I sat through the whole thing and I was finding out stuff from Bond that I didn't know about, like he was a 006 and then get that other number you would have to kill an important figure. That was sort of like the end of Casino Royale.
Well, one of the things you got at a GoldenEye is the fact that Sean Bean's playing 006.
Yeah, the first Pierce Brosnan one, the bad guy is 006.
And Sean Bean's line is, "Why won't you die?"
Because I'm immortal.
Right.
Because I'm an intellectual property of the Broccoli Company.
I get to move up to be number 007. There are other 00s out there. And 9 times out of 10, those characters aren't introduced, but they're all there.
So you either look at the character as this title that gets passed on from spy to spy to spy, or you just ignore all that and go, they just cast a new actor. And it depends on whether or not you want to institutionalize that or not, which is up to the Broccolis.
How many Bonds is this? What?
6 or 7.
6 or 7. With 7 personalities.
1, 2, 6 so far.
6 of them. I think it's like one person with 6 different personalities.
7's coming.
Well, 7.
7's coming. Talked about when we were talking about this online. If 7 is done by Christopher Nolan, which is the Broccoli people want to hire us to do Bond, number 7 is going to be
Tom Hardy. Strange Tom Hardy.
Because Nolan said, I'd love to direct a Bond film. No, I don't want to direct Daniel Craig's last film. I want to have my own, and I think Tom Hardy would be perfect as James Bond, and Tom Hardy is Daniel Craig, a little younger. He's rougher on the edges.
Well, if that's the case, then you're not going to get Henry Cavill.
Well,
because he won't pick him. And Cavill would be in the suave mode.
Yeah.
Cavill would be in suave mode, but I don't think he can get past the cape. I mean, not that Cavill can't do other stuff, but going from Superman to James Bond, I think is too big a leap.
Well, it could be, but, you know...
I mean, you can go from Superman to any one of dozens of other little roles.
Yeah, but then you say most of the actors, they don't like to be pigeonholed into a certain thing.
What do you think James Bond does?
Well, Craig has done
that was one of the whole reasons why Sean Connery left in the first place. Roger Moore didn't care because his attitude was, I hit the jackpot. I'm going to ride this for as long as I can, which he did. And he'd already had a career before that.
He was the same.
Moore at that point was like, I'm at the end of my career anyway. And it's like, I'm a British kid and I'm playing James Bond. How cool is that?
The next two after that, Timothy Dalton and Pierce Brosnan, they were both maids in waiting.
Yeah.
Dalton just got picked before Brosnan because Brosnan had the problem with his contract.
He couldn't get out of the NBC contract.
But they were both maids in waiting for that thing. You know, they were looking to get that role. They didn't mind being pigeonholed in that role because that was the biggest thing they were going to do in their career.
And think about that. Henry Cavill was up to being James Bond before he was hired to be Superman. So if they hired Cavill, he would have never been Superman.
No, if he had never been Superman and had they picked him, I think he would have been fine as James Bond. But at this point, no. I don't think he can credibly pull off James Bond after having been Superman. Even in 3 lousy Superman appearances.
Tom Hiddleston could be, he could do it as well. That thing he did.
The movie he did last year.
He could do it. Yeah. No, let's go back to the end of this thing. The character of James Bond has inspired multiple characters since that point. Matt Helm.
Yeah,
who was played by Dean Martin, and will be played by Bradley Cooper, who bought all the Matt Helm books.
Well, inspired is being very generous.
Inspired.
Matt Helm was ripped off.
Yeah, well, okay, it was a home
stolen.
Yes, it was a home.
Derek Flint, James Coburn. That was an outright ripoff. They were quite adamant. Yeah, we're stealing it.
Yeah, but I'll say this much: compared to Matt Helm, the Flint ones actually. They tried to do something with the Flint ones that was different.
I own the complete DVD set of those films because James Coburn was, at that point, the coolest white guy on the planet.
Well, but with those movies, they were trying to do something different. And they were ripping off James Bond, but that's like Batman TV series, the one that you love so much.
Yeah.
Okay, well, they were doing something different with the character.
They were doing something different.
Okay, whether you like it or not, they were doing something different with the character. Yeah. That's what the Flint stuff was.
Harry Palmer, The Empress Files.
Yeah.
That was the anti-James Bond because Michael Caine did not look like a spy. He was a British guy with glasses and wore a drab coat and a hat, but he was a spy.
And actually, that was more in the mold of
that was John Le Carré. Yeah, and that was based on a series of novels as well. That character actually existed. Harry Palmer existed.
Yeah, the grinding monotony of being a spy. That was the first time that they did that. You know, and it was the anti-James Bond. You know, you think James Bond is suave and gets in all these situations, and all the women hanging off.
Both
and everything.
spies look like Michael Caine.
Let me show you what it's actually like. Right. He gets up in the morning and he makes himself coffee in his underwear.
Yeah.
And then he goes to work. He's a middle management guy who's got to deal with a lot of stamp padding of crap and putting it in file cabinets.
Right. Jason Bourne. If there was no Jason Bourne, if it was for James Bond, the entire Mission Impossible film things. That's basically them doing the Bond films, but with Tom Cruise.
No. Well, Mission Impossible, the TV series, boiled down to the con.
Yeah.
That's all it was. Every episode was just the con. You could dress it up as much as you want as we're saving the world and fighting the forces of the Iron Curtain, which is something you haven't mentioned yet, is James Bond started
in there
and has his core in the Cold War.
Russians and Soviets.
Yeah, and that was the big thing with Bond. Once the Cold War was over with, what the hell are you going to do with Bond?
Who am I going to fight?
But Mission Impossible, the TV series, it was basically just a big con show. Yeah. It was an hour of we're going to con this guy into doing something where he's going to wind up getting screwed, and that way we'll have accomplished our mission.
Yeah, and then when you did the first Cruise film, which it's the worst of all of them, because the plot makes no sense whatsoever. But it's got set action scenes and stuff like that. The films have gotten better since they're Bond films without doing James Bond films and many others. Inception is Christopher Nolan's James Bond film. That's a Bond movie.
A scientific Bond movie.
It's a scientific Bond movie. By the way, if we're going to talk about Inception, Michael Caine says the ending sequence there, that actually is real. They're not dreaming. All the people at the end of that film are alive. After all these years, he explained it. The top spins, it hits the ground. They're not dreaming. So Caine basically solved that problem.
Thank you, Michael Caine.
Thank you, Michael Caine.
He's like, I'm about to die, I can tell people. And no one said I can tell people.
What do you mean he's about to die? Is he
Michael Caine's not... Well, Michael Caine's, what, 70 years old?
So what? He's not about to die? He lived in his 90s.
Well, he's at the end of the career where he can say anything he wants, and he's like, nobody's going to say anything about it.
Don't ever say you're at the end of your career. Christopher Plummer just got an Academy Award nomination. And how old is he?
84.
84.
Well, he's way up there.
He's pretty old. Who's your best James Bond? Out of all of
them. I grew up on Roger Moore.
Yes.
Casino Royale, at the end of it, I'm sitting up there going, damn, this guy should have been James Bond a while ago. Now, how you come back from Quantum of Solace to knocking it out the park with Skyfall is ridiculously good.
When you were doing Quantum of Solace, you had a writer's strike and they were writing the film while they were making it, which is never a good sign.
You never good, right. Yeah. But how you go from that to Skyfall and not only knock it out the park, but grand slam it like that?
Because you brought in Sam Mendes, who was a prestige guy. Now, we're talking about who could be the next Bond 25. Who directed Casino Royale? Martin Campbell's not dead. He brought in Craig. Well, let him finish it up. Then that solves your problem. And he's not expensive either. And he'd walk right in it, and the Broccoli family loves him. But no, my favorite is still going to be Connery. He sets a template. There is no template without Connery. Connery established exactly what the character was. Craig is number 2 for me. Brosnan's number 3. Timothy Dalton is, I think Dalton's 4. Moore's 5, and George Lazenby is 6, just because they only did one movie. And so since you only did one, but it's only one movie, and you can't be on the top.
Well, somebody's got to be last, so it's him.
Yeah,
It's like Pete Best in the Beatles.
If you really want to be honest, the last would be David Niven.
If you watch On Her Majesty's Secret Service, they spend a lot of time covering for him.
He couldn't act.
Yeah, they spent a lot of time.
He was a male model, and it showed.
I mean, James Bond is in that movie. If James Bond is in that movie, but he's not starring in that movie.
He's a supporting character in his own movie.
Yeah.
The main character in the movie is Telly Savalas and Diana Rigg.
Well, actually, it's more of a Diana Rigg vehicle than anything else.
Yeah,
and she gets killed at the end of it.
Yeah, or acts at every single turn. You know, Lazenby had the look, but he wasn't really good at it. He had the look, though. And he's also cheap. I think the film succeeds despite his presence in the film.
And that's the sad thing about it, is because if Sean Connery had been in it, it would have been the film that everybody talks about all the time as being the pinnacle of the James Bond films. If you're looking for the one James Bond film to watch, that would be it.
It's the first time you see Blofeld, who's hinted at all the other films. He gets married, and then his wife dies.
I mean, it's got all the character stuff packed into it.
It's got one of the best ending lines that we've got all the time in the world. That's the last line of the movie. And they know, because she died.
Yes! I remember watching, ABC Sunday Night Movie, hearing that, and then pow! She's dead.
Blofeld escapes.
That is the one event in all the future movies that they keep referring back to, in some way, shape, or form, as a throwaway line. Tell me about James Bond. What's he like? Well, let's see, he was married once, and then...
Yeah, they do. In every movie, they do bring that up.
He was married, then widowed, you know, and they'll just keep going on. I mean, they'll shoot right past it, but it's there.
There would have been no Prisoner TV show without James Bond. Secret Agent.
Secret Agent, man, predated James Bond, didn't it? Wasn't that in the 50s?
No, it wasn't in the 50s. I think it was in the 60s.
Was it?
Yeah, I think it was in the 60s.
Prisoner was sort of a separate animal.
It was like
they weren't trying to do spy stuff in that. He was doing metaphors for
consumption,
for being locked up, for being imprisoned, for being caged. The different metaphors you can go through for that. You know, prisoner of the mind, prisoner of your physical body, prisoner of the spirit, prisoner of whatever. Every single episode was a variation on that theme and examining what it's like to be a prisoner. And the Prisoner series had very little to do with James Bond. Now, Secret Agent, and as much as you want to say that the Prisoner is the spiritual descendant of Secret Agent, to that extent.
But if you've read any of the Bond books, the place where the character lives, the prisoner lives, that's James Bond's apartment. That's his house.
He's only in it in the opening credits.
James Bond, he lives in a row house. You know, every time.
I mean, in the first episode, he's in it for all of like 3 minutes.
This is my house and stuff, man. Craig's number 2.
He's my number 1. Now, my favorite one out of all of them is Goldfinger.
Not my favorite.
Daniel Craig is my Bond, but my favorite one just happened to be the first one of the Bonds that I saw. Mm-hmm. That's my favorite one. My least favorite one would have to be
View to a Kill.
It's gotta be View to a Kill. I think that's everyone's least favorite.
I just like the song.
The song is fine, but I mean, but after you watch the opening credits, you're stuck with 2 hours.
I paid to go see it, and I said, "What?
I sat through it in the theater too. Yeah. It's a lousy movie.
Even more himself knew it was going to be bad because
he knew it sucked.
Well, it was also his last film, and
yeah,
he was way past being the right age for that.
Yeah,
character.
he was old.
Yeah, he was old. Bond.
He should have been playing M at that point.
No, he shouldn't have even been in that movie at that point.
They should have simply said, "Why don't we pull the trigger now?"
What wasn't the one previous to View to a Kill? Wasn't that For Your Eyes Only?
No, For Your Eyes Only was before Octopussy.
Was it?
Because Maud Adams is one
It didn't go from Octopussy to View to a Kill, did it?
No, but Maud Adams is one of the few actresses that popped up in 2 different Bond films playing completely different characters.
Yeah,
and even old Moonraker had Patrick McGee. And it wasn't horrible, but it also had Jaws, which
Moonraker was before Octopussy.
Yeah.
I remember we saw Moonraker, and I really had no interest in going to see Octopussy, but I kept seeing all the good reviews of it, and it washed the taste of Moonraker out of my mouth.
Yeah, pretty good. Yeah.
Because I was surprised by how good it was. It was really good.
Yeah, the problem with Moonraker was the villain was, even though he was a great actor, Michael Lonsdale, he just wasn't interesting at all. He was boring. A Bond villain can't be boring.
No.
Well, Jaws was in that, and Jaws was more interesting than he was.
Yeah.
And this was Jaws' second film, I think, in James Bond, and it was campy as hell.
No, he became,
they did a whole love thing between him and the little Swedish girl.
He became comic relief.
Yeah, he was comic relief.
He was a villain, and he became comic relief when they brought him back for the second film. But my favorite is Skyfall.
God, I love that movie.
Skyfall.
I love Skyfall.
He comes over the trailer. He's sitting there, and they're talking to Bond in the room, and he says Skyfall, and he just says done. And you're going, what? What? What is this? Because there have been multiple attempts at telling us that James Bond is a younger life as a teenager. There are adventures there because his parents got killed. So you go back to the whole history of the character, which they've tried multiple times to turn into movies, and it just never happens.
You know what I also love about Skyfall is the fact that they shook Bond to his core. For the first time, you can actually see that Bond didn't have it. When M was telling him to go back to training, and the guy lied and said, "How many did he hit today?" Didn't hit anything, Mom. He totally missed the targets.
Everything.
It was like he was basically shaking.
He was shaking.
But not stirred.
Not stirred.
It's like a shaker, not stirred, and then Craig's line is, do I look like I give a damn?
Yeah. I clapped when he did.
There we go.
When he said that, I got up and clapped. Yes.
But isn't that on par to Batman showing up at the top of the police building and the commissioner's there with the bat signal, and Batman would show up and say, turn that damn thing off.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, but I mean, who wants to see that?
Yeah, you don't want to
see that. After 20-some years, you finally... Daniel Craig said point blank, we're starting over with Bond, and we're going to tell his history, but this isn't the Bond that you grew up watching.
Yeah, and then the high point of Quantum of Solace is the ending. You're talking to him, and she says, welcome back to the service, and he goes, I never left.
Okay, so we're going to take a break, and we'll be right back after this. Every Sunday is super at Alternate Reality with our Super Sunday Sale. Each Sunday we pick a different character, family, or publisher, and we discount all of their comics and trade paperbacks 25% off all day long. What we pick for the sale is different each week, but each Sunday you'll save 25% off. And that's all day long, all day Sunday, only at Alternate Reality. And we're back. So, Bo, why don't you put a bow on this whole thing?
Bond 25, the end of an era. Speculation will begin running wild. Who's going to be the next James Bond? I don't think it's going to be a long, hard, heavy search. I think they're going to make an announcement around the same time this film comes out. And I think you're going to have a picture of whoever this actor is and Daniel Craig at the premiere. And they're going to make this a big deal handoff. This could even be a BBC special.
But
the new James Bond.
The Bond people have a history of not doing that. There was not a handoff between Connery and Moore. No. There was not a handoff between Moore and Dalton, or between Dalton and Brosnan, or between Brosnan and
that's not exactly true.
Brosnan said he found out that he wasn't with the Bond franchise anymore when he got a phone call and said, hey, we're doing the next film without you. Oh, well, thanks.
Yeah, but when Daniel Craig was named James Bond, there was a press conference introducing him as James Bond.
There was a press conference.
Yeah,
there was no handoff.
There's no handoff.
Brosnan wasn't there.
He just found out about it through the phone call.
If there's a handoff, it would be the first time they've ever done that with this character.
And they could do something interesting like that. I think that would make a lot of sense.
You mean sort of like the whole, we got a new Doctor Who showing in Sunday afternoon, stay tuned for the new Doctor Who.
They only did that for Peter Capaldi. Jodie Whittaker, they didn't do that with her.
They just said, oh, by the way, it's the new Doctor Who.
Yeah.
They should have did a special.
Well, they should have, but they did.
Anyway.
That's it.
You didn't ask me about my bonds.
What's your favorite Bond?
I don't have one. I don't.
Yeah, I know. That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
Why did you? Wait a minute.
This show was in my idea. I started this show off by saying this was Bo's show.
Wait a minute.
And I don't have a problem with doing a show about Bond.
He and I have seen multiple Bond films, and 9 times out of 10, he's being dragged to these films kicking and screaming.
He doesn't.
He doesn't care for the character.
But you sat through all Star Trek movies.
Wait a second. Wait a second. Can I?
Go ahead.
I didn't say he hated the films.
Can I say something here? I've come to a grudging respect for the character over the years. Okay. It is not in my wheelhouse. My wheelhouse is science fiction. Okay. My wheelhouse is superheroes. Mm-hmm. My wheelhouse is not spies. I've watched Smiley's People. I've seen both versions of Smiley's People. I think it's a fine movie and was a fine series on Channel 11 when it was on PBS. I have no interest in owning it. I have no interest in digging deep into that. I don't care that much about spies. The whole, we talked about him earlier, Caine, Michael Caine.
Michael Caine.
That series that he did?
Yeah, Ipcress Files.
Yeah, the Ipcress Files.
Berlin.
I had a curiosity in seeing those, and I watched all of those because I'd heard of what they were. And I watched them, and they were fine movies. Yeah. Okay? I have no interest in owning them, though. The Super Spy thing has never done anything for me. But, having said that, as far as James Bond is concerned, yeah, I have an appreciation for the spectacle of the series. I have appreciation for its longevity. I have an appreciation for the cultural impact that it's had on movies and on the genre in general. But as far as a character goes, I still think, and I've always thought, the character's a pig. I've never thought anything different about the character. He is not somebody that I would want to look up to. Batman I have more interest in looking up to than I have James Bond. And Batman, I am really getting bored to death with Batman with his head shoved so far up his own butt with my parents are dead. Yeah. It's time to move on from that. My character is Superman. I like Superman. And I don't care what anyone else thinks about Superman. A Boy Scout? Okay, fine. I don't have a problem with that. You don't like Superman because he's a Boy Scout? Great. Okay. I still like him. James Bond is sort of a pig. And the Connery ones set that in concrete for me.
That's what turned me off of Connery. I hate to say it, but that's what turned me off of him.
But the Roger Moore ones, got incredibly campy, which also turned me off on Bond. Now, having said all that, I really like Octopussy a lot. And Octopussy is a good movie throughout, but at the end, he's at the circus, dressed like a clown, defusing a bomb because he doesn't want all the people in the circus to get killed. Mm-hmm. That is a hero. That is not the guy that grabs a woman, dances with her, uses her as a shield to get shot in the back, lays her down in a chair and says she's dead on her feet and walks out the door. That's a pig. But the guy who's there in clown suit defusing a bomb because he doesn't want a bunch of people to get killed that are inside the circus with him, that's a hero. And that's the reason why I like Octopussy so much. And it's just a good film leading up to that, everything leading up to it. That is probably my favorite Bond film. Sort of like GoldenEye. GoldenEye's
real good.
GoldenEye's good as a film by itself. Yeah. And I think Brosnan, as far as I'm concerned, I thought Brosnan hit it out of the park his first time up at bat with GoldenEye. It's all progressively downhill after that. But GoldenEye's a good film, too. And as much as I just said about Connery, as a whole, I can watch Connery stuff and enjoy it for the spectacle.
Right.
I don't have any use for the character, but I can enjoy it as a spectacle. Bond has never been a big favorite of mine. He never has been. But I appreciate the character for the impact that he's had and for the position he takes in all of this. But the spy thing, it's just tedious. But, I also know that you, Bo, you're a big fan of detective stuff.
Yes, I am.
Detective stuff's never done all that much for me either. Really for me, I'll sit through a whole season of Space 1999, which is a terrible series. But I will sit through a whole season of that before I'll sit through a season of any detective show that you want to pick out, no matter how good or bad it is.
Sherlock?
Sherlock is Sherlock Holmes. Sherlock Holmes is different. That's a different animal altogether, Sherlock Holmes. Sherlock Holmes is more of, and I know that he's not because I know the history of the character, but he's not in the heroic mode, but he sort of is. He sort of sets the template for all this stuff. And so I have a lot of respect for Sherlock Holmes because of that.
So
I remember when I watched Equalizer for the first time. I got those VHS tapes, and I watched them. It's a fine series. Edward Woodward does a fine job as that character. But, would I seek out the rest of those to watch them? No, I wasn't that interested in them. But they were entertaining to watch for what they were.
But you know what Disney Washington films need? They need a Mickey. There's no Mickey in those films yet. I'm looking for a Mickey.
Anyway, that's going to do it for James Bond. Do you two folks have any parting thoughts?
I'm just happy to be around to actually seen every last one of the Bonds, and Craig came in, knocked it out of the park, and I hope his last one is just as good as the first one.
Should be.
Because you've got this ratio of for every 2 good Bond movies, that's 4 or 5 bad ones in there.
No, I don't think you got that.
No, he hasn't.
No. For most of the series, you really don't. I mean, when you start getting to the crappy ones, it's when the characters playing the character get older. The World Is Not Enough.
Yeah.
It's a weak film.
Well, yeah, Denise Richards.
So as the characters get longer in the tooth, as the actors get longer in the tooth,
as the actors get older, then it begins to be worse. Actually, Diamonds Are Forever with an old Bond is actually a pretty good film.
That's the one where he came back.
Yeah.
After he took off the Secret Service and he came back for Diamonds Are Forever.
Yeah.
Sean Connery did.
Yeah, he's an old Bond, but it's actually effective as being an old Bond.
Older Bond. And Never Say Never, is not a terrible movie.
No, it's not.
It's a remake of Thunderball, so it's derivative in that sense.
Yeah.
But he's playing an old Bond in that. He literally is an older Bond. Mm-hmm. And it's interesting because of that, because it's showing the character having to come to terms with the fact.
I'm older.
And he's not 28, 29 years old anymore. He's pushing 50.
Yeah. Right.
But he's still going through the motions, and I can't really go through these motions, but I'm going to go through these motions. I'm going to try. And that's interesting.
Yeah. You just don't like Sean Connery.
He's a pig.
Well, I said that about James Bond. As far as Sean Connery goes, as far as Sean Connery goes, he has done many movies which I've enjoyed. Sean Connery's big fault has been picking lousy movies. I mean, after he left James Bond to go on to other films to stretch his acting talent, he picked a lot of movies.
He picked a lot of crappy movies. But
I think it's apropos his last movie would be League of Extraordinary Gentlemen.
That was actually a good film if it hadn't been edited to death by Sean Connery. He turns in a fine performance in that film. I have no problem with him playing Alan Quartermain, and I have no problem with any of the other actors in that film. The movie just doesn't work
because basically he ran roughshod over the director because he goes, "You haven't done enough for me to pay attention to you."
That would have been a great film for him to write into the sunset.
And by the way, the guy who directed, he's never worked again. No, he had one hit Blade, and then they said, "Let's hire him to do this." And they looked at it and they went to Sean and go, "Could you fix this?"
Connery was doing a lot of interfering on the set with him, and he never got along with the director, and there was a lot of fighting between the two.
No, because the director was a kid. He said, "You don't know what the hell you're doing."
I don't know. I think interference is interference. Actor interference is just as bad.
Yeah.
Studio might not have interfered, but the actor did on the set.
I'm not coming out of my trailer today. Why? Because you don't know what you're doing.
Which is just as bad. If he hadn't done that, the film might have been better. Like I said, that would have been a great film for Connery to write into the sunset on, especially if it had been good and they'd done a sequel of it where he'd play Alan Quartermain again. Yeah. I know he died at the end of the thing, but at the end of the movie, they also have a thing where he could come back. So I mean, well, no, he buried in Africa, and the rifle's on the grave, and then it starts shaking, and the rifle slides off the grave.
Oh my God, at that point, Connery's like, I'm about done here. I'm old. It's hard for me to get insurance. So I'm old. I don't need to be doing on locations. I'd rather just work around the house because I've got this big castle in Scotland that I live in, and I don't need to work.
Connery's a fine actor. He just picked lousy movies over the years. Yeah. As far as what he's like in his personal life, he might not be everyone's ideal, but I mean, you shouldn't judge actors or talent of any sort on. This is the argument I get into with people about writers and artists in comics. Okay, judge them on their work, not on what they're like at cons, not on what they're like online, not on what they're like somewhere else. I mean, if you don't like the work because you don't like the work, that's fine. Yeah. But if you don't like the work because you don't like something they've said on the internet, well, you get your head up your butt.
Yeah, and Connery has gone out of his way to help people, and he has a charity, and he gives people money. There's been nobody complaining about his content at all. He made a comment, 15 years ago? You can hold it against him? It's 15 years ago.
Well, it was about slapping around his wife.
Yeah. And his wife was like, okay. She's like, I slap him around too. I'm Italian. That's what I do. And they're still together, and they never broke up.
One of the things I think that you ought to mention about James Bond is it's not a character that you have to have a lot of depth as an actor to play. No. It's sort of like Indiana Jones. You don't need a lot of depth to play James Bond. You need to be pretty or rough looking, like Daniel Craig. But once you get into that role, there isn't a lot of stretching that goes on in that role.
No.
You do the lines that you're expected to do, shaken, not stirred, Bond, James Bond, all that crap. You throw in some snappy witticisms that are in the script, and you pick up your check and you go home at the end of the day, and boy, he looks good in a tuxedo.
And you do these little cute things, like, where he goes to the train and the first thing Craig does is he straightens his coat. And he's like, that wasn't in the script. He just did because he said he should straighten his coat because he's James Bond.
Yeah, but you're not going to win an Oscar for straightening your coat.
You're not going to win an Oscar.
No.
There's nothing in a James Bond movie that's going to win anybody an Oscar.
You're not going to win.
Just the songs. That's it.
Songs, production design, stuff like that.
You're not going to knock yourself out playing James Bond. And Batman is the same way.
Yeah,
Batman is not a character that you have to do a lot of broad acting for. Despite what everyone wants to think about Batman.
That would be Christian Bale Batman,
yes.
I believe.
Yes.
It's universal Batman.
When they picked Ben Affleck to play Batman, everybody's screaming about, oh my God, Batfleck, he's going to ruin the role. Really? How's he going to ruin the role?
Yeah.
He's a better actor than the role requires. All he has to do is look good in the costume and know his lines, period. Superman is probably harder to do than Batman just because you have to find something there to put into the character.
Yeah.
You can't hide behind the mask.
No, there's no mask. He's right there in the open.
Chris Reeves said, and this holds true for James Bond too, on the tuxedo.
Yeah.
Chris Reeves said, you let the costume do like 90% of the acting.
The costume does all the work.
The costume does most of the work, and that works for Batman too. You let the costume do most of the work. People are expecting Batman or Superman or James Bond. If you're wearing the tuxedo, the white tuxedo, and you got the cigarette hanging out of the corner of your mouth, and you say Bond, James Bond, you're halfway there. And that ain't much.
That's Dr. No.
Yeah, Casino Royale. He doesn't say John James Bond until the end of the damn movie.
And that's going to do it for the alternate reality for this time. Be sure to stop off the store's website, myalternatereality.com, where you can find all of Bo's news, you can find all of JR and Vito's reviews, and you can find out all about shipping, sales, and everything else that has to do with alternate reality, the store, at myalternatereality.com. And until next time, this is Comic Book Man saying for good old Rod Flash.
Is that your theme song?
Dun, 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 dun.
Man, being a musical guy, I would expect something better than that out of you.
What the hell?
I am sorely disappointed.
What the hell?
And Bo?
Hello, boys and girls.
We're saying goodbye, Bo.
Have a good night.
Thank you, Bo. Yes.
I like a martini now.
I think his Gatorade was shaking that stirred over there.
I got a Bill Cosby drink.
Yeah, Bill Cosby drink. And this Comic Book Man saying, until next time, folks, take care and bye. Thanks a lot for listening. If you enjoyed this show, please like and share it with all your friends. We value your feedback, so drop us a question, comment, show idea, or complaint either at aircomics@msn.com or, if provided, in the comments section down below on this platform. The opinions expressed in this episode are solely those of the individuals and not necessarily those of Alternate Reality Incorporated. This show is, as always, coming to you from the Alternate Reality Comic Shop, located in the heart of beautiful downtown Mount Greenwood at the intersection of 111th and Kedzie, serving Chicago comics fandom since 1994.
This concludes the broadcast from World Control.